back to the Weekly Driver Podcast, episode number 6. My name is James Rea, and I'm the editor and publisher of theweeklydriver.com. My co-host is Bruce Aldrich, and we'd like to welcome you to the show. If you're interested in supporting our progress on our podcast, we have an account on PayPal, and the address is james@by_James_Rea. That's james@BY_JamesRea.com. A few episodes ago, we were talking about the value of cars and the great number of cars that are available in the United States for $25,000 or less. So we were thinking about it, and we thought we would go to the other extreme and talk about cars that are quite expensive, and a few of which we've driven and a few of which we just wish we owned. And as a car reviewer for the last 13 or 14 years, I often get questions about, why don't you just drive Ferraris or Maseratis or Lambos or other elite cars? And that just doesn't always work that way. You get all shapes and sizes. But through the years, I have had a chance to drive a few high-end cars, very high-end cars, and we're going to discuss those today. So, Bruce, how are you doing? And welcome to episode 6.
Thanks, James. Fun to talk about the expensive ones.
Yes.
They're, like you say, a lot of them aren't practical. None of them really make sense, but, they really feed your ego. And, hey, many times that's what it's about, I guess. I have 4 cars that I wished I owned, and I will never own any of them.
I have 4 as well.
But they would sure be nice.
Okay, we're gonna save the most unique one, I think, that I never thought I would drive, and that you never thought you'd drive, and I didn't know it existed. But it's a really nice car for a lot of money, but we both liked it very much. So I'll start first. It took 5 or 6 years into writing the automotive column I write, the Weekly Driver, to actually drive a pretty elite car, and at that time it was the most expensive car I've driven. I didn't know much about it, but it was an Audi A8 with a V12 engine in it, and it was 2008, and I drove it to Reno and back, and it was a fantastic car. It drove like a tank. It was, people looked at it all over the road, and I had 4 or 5 other people in the car, but what a fantastic car to drive, except that when I filled the gas tank up, I remember I had to fill it up, I got 8 miles to the gallon. So I think it was the only car I've ever driven that had single-digit miles per gallon. I think it was rated at 13 and 16, but I got nowhere close to that because, of course, you're going into the mountains, and I was, revving it up and having a little fun with it. So I remember laughing hysterically that the car got 8 miles to the gallon. So in that area of, you're not obviously buying a practical car on any level, but it was beautifully designed. The engine had this wonderful growl. It was powerful, and it was a wonderful luxury car.
Well over $100,000, wasn't it?
$140,000 at that time, and I thought, oh my gosh,
that's a lot.
That's a lot. I don't know how many they sold, but there's a car. I don't even know if they make the Audi A8 with the V12 in it, but I can't imagine that they sold very many of them. So that was my first car driving in the kind of luxury, high-end area, and of course it's 2008, so 140 then is, I don't know what it would transfer into now, but it was quite a car.
I do remember it was a beautiful car, but I remember the sitting in the back seat with a huge amount of leg room, and the wine glasses and the little built-in cooler back there. That was the first time I've run into that stuff before.
Yeah, and that was the first, as you mentioned earlier, the first time that we got a glimpse of cars we're probably not going to own, at least in this lifetime. And really, if I had the opportunity to own it, I don't think I would, but for a week's drive and to cruise around and have a fun time with friends, it was a pretty neat experience just for a week.
Well, it was all-wheel drive, right? That's a ski car.
It was a perfect for a ski car. And I think the length of the car, you probably could have fit in two skis lengthwise, front to back of the car. It was huge. So that was my first car, 2008 Audi A8 with the V12 engine, V12 engine, yes.
So the car that I'll talk about, I haven't driven it, but it also has a V12 twin turbo and 600 horsepower, and it's Aston Martin. It's the DB11. So it's got ties to James Bond. It's got all that emotional stuff, which is neat. But the lines on that car, the beauty, the way that's sculpted, it's unbelievable. $216,000 to start. So I'm sure it's going to be well over $250 by the time you walked out the door with one of those things. Top speed of 200 miles an hour and a 0 to 60 and, well, I have 0 to 62 speed in 3.9, so it's pretty darn fast car too. But that would be one car. It's sort of, I guess you'd sort of call it practical. You know, it's kind of like a Maserati type thing. It's a sedan, well, two-door. So it's really good looking. The styling's unbelievable, and it's pretty exclusive. So I like that one.
Is there? You think that there's any other car other than an Aston Martin that's so closely associated with a movie than the James Bond films? I know there were other cars in James Bond movies, but everybody, when you see an Aston Martin, even if you don't know what it is or anything about it, you say, "Oh, the James Bond car." It's unmistakable.
James Bond, yep. They used Lotus for a couple of times there, but I don't think. Never got the way that the DBs did.
And do you know? I don't know much about the DB11. Is it currently produced? Have they made them for a number of years now, or do they keep changing the numbers?
They're changing the numbers. Yeah, I don't know the DB11 how long it's been around. It's the current car right now. Like I say, it's a V12 twin turbo, or you can get a little 8 if you want. But who wants that? Hey, we're dreaming here.
And it has an 8-speed automatic transmission.
Yeah, at the rear axle for weight distribution.
Ah, I see.
You can't do anything normal. You got to change things around. Put the transmission in the back.
Yeah. Well, second on my list is a few years ago I had a chance to go on a debut of the RollsRoyce Wraith in Arizona, and I drove with another auto journalist. We drove into the desert, and we were picked up at the airport along with a bunch of other journalists and other examples of the Wraith. And we got this guy had a typical English approach. The guy had on a long tails and a top hat, and he shook our hands and he said, "We're going to go to this function, but we're going to get on the freeway and we have a little game to play." And he said, "You guys are in the back seat, and when I punch it, we're gonna guess how fast we're going right on the freeway ramp, right in downtown Arizona." And we thought, "Oh boy, who's this guy?" And he punched it, and I guessed we were going 95, and the other journalist, I forgot his name or what publication he represented, but he guessed 90 or 92, and we were going 117 on the freeway ramp. So that was my introduction to the RollsRoyce Wraith. And what a car. Rolls-Royce, of course, has had its ups and downs in its time, but they've come back lately with these beautiful cars, and this one was priced at $376,000 in 2004, two-tone, kind of this beautiful metallic silver and a really rich dark blue, and I believe it's the largest coupe ever made, and it had 2 doors, but they were like, I guess they still call them suicide
doors.
Suicide doors. But inside, other than beautiful paneling and beautiful quadruple stitching seats and just plush, and everything looks beautiful. Push buttons that just have that certain classy feel to them, and everything you did, every function of the car was beautifully designed and classic. But the 2 things that I remember, not only driving the car that was fantastic, but it had the skylight. You told Rolls-Royce what you wanted, and they made a constellation. I think there were 11 or 1,200 little filament bulbs, and you tell Rolls-Royce what you want, and they make that skyline for you out of these filament bulbs.
Taurus the bull.
That's right. And the other part was you also request, you have a preference on what kind of wood that you want to use, walnut, mahogany, whatever it is, and all the paneling, all the wood, handcrafted paneling in that car is the wood that you choose to have it. So you're paying just under $400,000. You get to have what you want to have. And I remember that this guy from Rolls-Royce, very distinguished, blue blazer, looked perfect, and he had this great English accent. He told us that they were going to manufacture 1,500 of them, but before they were manufactured, before they were available, they had already sold. So there was that niche audience of Rolls-Royce aficionados that bought the car before it was made.
You have them built to your specification. Sure, that's half the fun, I guess.
I guess that's it.
Building your next house on, out there on the wherever it is that you like. That's same with the cars.
When under the area of money's no object, that's a car that you can just have because you want it. Highly impractical, but beautiful.
Sure. The car next I'm thinking is a Panamera Turbo Sport, the new Turismo, which is I guess you don't want to say wagon, but it's kind of the Panamera wagon. It's all-wheel drive, 550 horsepower, twin turbo V8, and it only starts at around 154,000. So I'm sure you'd probably load that up to about 200,000.
Yeah,
time you
lunch
got out
money.
the door.
Yeah,
but that would be a ski car. I am a skier, and I like that bigger boot in the back, if you will.
Yes,
sort of the wagon look to it. So I think that's a highly practical car. That's expensive.
Right. Is it a 4-door or a 2-door?
Four.
Four. The Panameras are all 4 doors, I think.
Yes.
Okay. And there are purists who say that you can't have a Porsche 4-door.
It makes the real Porsche guys madder in hell, I think. That they ever built.
I think they look beautiful. I mean,
I like them.
So, and that's $154,000 base price, but with all the little extras, but all the extras, it's $200,000 or so.
Yeah.
And what the speed? 3.6 0 to 60.
Yep, that's pretty darn fast. 8-speed, dual clutch transmission in it. They can shift a lot faster than a person can.
Yeah,
they're the way to go.
I don't even know these. Are there we're in Northern California, so are there a whole variety of different Porsche dealers, or are they combined with some other manufacturer? Does a Porsche sit alone, or do you know?
I think they sit alone.
Do they?
The one at least here in town in Sacramento sits alone.
Okay. I guess I haven't. Is it on Fulton Avenue? We have all these car dealerships on Fulton. I don't even know where it's located.
I think it's actually Roseville.
Oh, it's Roseville. Okay, all right. Well, that's a great car. Well, the other two, early last year, for the first time, I had a chance to drive a very rare car that has a long history, and it was. The Queen's car. Everybody calls it the Queen's car. It was a Bentley Mulsanne, and what a beautiful sedan. $400,000, and it was over in the Napa wine country, and we went for some test drives, and then I had the car for a week. And what I really remember about that car is much like the Rolls-Royce, which I think they have a connection somewhere in the Wayback Machine somehow. I think Rolls and Bentley have had mutual owners, or maybe they still do have some connections. I'm not quite sure, but it's such a beautifully designed car. And I drove instead of coming home on the freeway, I drove the back country roads through the wine country, and I remembered that road is a perfect road for a nice convertible, maybe some of the cars you've mentioned with the top down. But here I am in an 18-foot long Bentley Mulsanne, and it maneuvered and it drove like it was a much shorter car, even though it's the longest car and the heaviest car I've ever driven. The way it drove was so smooth, you thought that you were in a sports car. Huge horsepower, 600 horsepower, amazing car, plush back seats with the wine, the champagne flutes, and all these wonderful extras that it does. And I think the most comfortable car and the most elegant car I've ever been in, with the exception that if you look at the back of the car, it's Bentley is known for its elegance, its subtleness. You really didn't know it's a Bentley. Understated. Thank you. Understated elegance. So what a beautiful car that was, and what a great experience to drive that for a week and just experience greatness.
Yeah, we went out on the town on that thing, and that was quite a machine. Yeah, nobody really looks twice at you.
No, isn't that the beauty of it?
It just blends in.
Yeah, that's real style when you don't have to be show-offy, but you know that you're in, one great car. So
absolutely,
that was that's my third pick. So what else?
So I was thinking another car. This is the most impractical car is an AMG GT, and specifically the C and a Roadster.
Okay.
So it's a convertible, and it's Mercedes kind of their hot vehicle right now. It's a 4-liter twin turbo V8, and it's also a really beautiful looking car, especially with the top down. But it's a good looking car even with the top up. I don't think they come with a hard top, so it's just a rag only. But boy, it is a good looking car.
What is the background of AMG and Mercedes connection? Is it the upper scale of Mercedes, or I don't really know
it's the
connection.
upper scale performance arm, but I don't know. Supposedly, I guess they're actually a separate entity, but they're glued at the hip.
Yeah,
they're together.
What is that car specs? What?
Well, that one's only 157,000.
Oh, let's go buy one.
So
lunch money.
It's nothing. Yeah, it's got that twin turbo V8, 7-speed dual clutch transmission, 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. 550 horsepower. So it's not really not lacking in a lot, and it's the practicality of it is it's just get it fixed at a regular old Mercedes dealership.
Yes.
There's none of this sending back for parts and this and that to England or Italy or wherever these some of the exotics are. So it's just a regular get it fixed anywhere type car, which I like. And you can't hardly beat a Roadster. Not on a nice warm, at least California evening.
Now I know you well enough to know that your wife has a Mercedes-Benz, so you're going to go from her Mercedes to this one, you think, anytime soon?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Is it some kind of subliminal message? That's why I picked this.
Maybe
because she has a SLK, AMG SLK 2000, which is not even that's like less than a Miata compared to this thing. So, her car is not this.
I know you're saving one to buy her for...
Yeah, that's what I think I'll get. I'll get her the GTC Roadster.
Okay, good. Well, lastly, we both picked the same car for the car that really surprises us, and it shouldn't be a surprise, but when we drove it, everything about it was fantastic. So, Bruce, why don't you go first on the car that we picked that we just really like the best?
Yeah, sure. It's the Bentley Bentayga. It's a big old beast of a SUV. It's actually built off the Audi Q7 platform, so this is part of the VW Automotive Group. So it's got a VW W12 6-liter, 600 horsepower twin turbo motor in it.
Wow.
So the thing moves. It is a nice looking car. It's like I say, it's a resculpted Q7. So you're probably familiar with the Audi Q7s, maybe.
Yes.
Anyway, this car is all about specialized builds. You can do an all-terrain build, a city build, a touring build. So what they're doing is they're trying to tailor the car to what your specific needs are.
Yes.
And anyway, what does this thing list at? I don't have the price here. Do you?
Yeah,
James?
about $335.
$335. Okay.
The one that we drove.
So anyway, they bill themselves as the world's fastest SUV, 187 miles per hour.
Oof. In an SUV.
Yeah. Anyway, we drove this thing, and it is incredible. These other cars, the Wraith, the Mulsanne, we've driven. It's like, this is nice, but it's like excess. This car is nice, and it's like, you can use this. This is practical. This can be a ski car. This thing, goes like a turbo Porsche, accelerates, and it corners. It's no sports car, but it corners pretty darn well.
Yes.
It's an SUV. You sit up high like people like to do, so you command of the road. That car, dare I say, worth it? I know that's a little strong language, but it's almost half worth it.
Well, if you remember, it also had, like the Mulsanne, it had all the front seats and the back seat had different levels of massage.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, different levels of massage.
I do remember the 10-inch tablets built into the rear seats.
Fantastic,
that
right?
Popped up for the rear seat passengers, unless they get bored or something.
Yes, I mean to drive and have a massage. Maybe it keeps you awake. Maybe it puts you to sleep. I'm not quite sure. Maybe both. But if you're the passenger in the front seat or the passengers in the back seat, we were fortunate enough to be driven to a dinner in that car from Sacramento to San Francisco, and it was a real treat. We had on the different massage configurations, and I think there was 5 or 6, maybe more. And what a great treat to be in that car. And along the road, quiet, smooth as can be, and the phenomenon of being in that fantastic car and it being an SUV and being the world's fastest SUV, put all that together, and it was just a car I never thought would exist, but it does.
Exactly. Yeah. This is your practical, ridiculously priced car.
that we both really want.
Yeah, that car I would want.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for the Weekly Driver podcast episode number 6. Be sure to visit my website, www.theweeklydriver.com, and make sure to visit Bruce's site, www.TahoeTruckieOutdoor.com. I beg your pardon. And also, if you care to support us once again, we would really appreciate that. And I'm on PayPal at james@by, that's B-Y, JamesRaya.com. james@byjamesraya.com. That's it for episode number 6. We'll talk to you next week. See you, folks.